Fake HOA mocked his speech. He lost his voice rescuing fire victims. It was a bright Sunday morning in Ashbrook Heights. The kind of morning where birds chirped in sync, sprinklers hummed, and neighbors waved to each other with coffee in hand. On the edge of Hawthorne Circle stood a modest home with a tidy lawn, a small American flag, and a hand-painted wooden sign near the mailbox that read, "Honor, Courage, Community." That was where Elijah Ford lived. Elijah, a tall black man in his early 40s, was a retired firefighter. His presence was calm, his movements deliberate, and his smile gentle. But when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, raspy, broken, almost inaudible. Most of the neighbors knew why. 3 years ago, Elijah had rushed into a burning apartment complex to save a trapped family. He rescued 5 people, 2 children, one elderly woman, and a mother with a newborn. In the process, he inhaled so much smoke that his vocal cords were permanently damaged. After weeks in the ICU, he survived, but his voice never fully came back. He never complained. Instead, Elijah spent his days volunteering at the local community center, helping kids learn fire safety, organizing donation drives, and checking on elderly neighbors. But not everyone in Ashbrook Heights respected quiet heroism, especially not Karen Whitmore, the self-declared president of the unofficial Neighborhood Rules Board, a fake HOA she controlled through newsletters, threats, and unspoken pressure. Karen was the type to measure your lawn down to the inch, report suspicious behavior if you didn't wave back, and scoff at anyone who didn't fit her picture of suburban perfection. And Elijah, a quiet man who rarely raised his voice and always wore faded rescue service shirts, he was unusual in her book. The trouble began when the neighborhood announced a local Community Hero Day. Each resident could nominate someone who had made a lasting impact. Elijah received over 30 nominations, from children, parents, war veterans, and even a few elderly residents he'd personally helped after surgeries or accidents. Karen was furious. She had been expecting the award to go to her friend Gloria, who ran the landscaping club. When the committee voted for Elijah, Karen scoffed. "All he does is wander around and mumble. That's not leadership." Still, the event moved forward. A small ceremony was organized at the local park. Families gathered, food trucks lined the street, and local news reporters arrived to cover the story. Elijah stood on the stage, a small mic clipped to his collar. He held a handwritten speech, simple words, heartfelt, nothing fancy. The crowd leaned in, listening closely as he began to speak in his quiet, raspy tone. "I never set out to be a hero," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "I just wanted to protect lives." But from the back, Karen's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Oh, please," she shouted. "Speak up. We can't hear your mumbling." Laughter from a few of her followers. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others whispered, shocked. Elijah paused. He tried to continue. When I was in the fire, I thought," Karen shouted again. "This is pathetic. A hero who can't even talk? What a joke!" Gasps. Someone yelled, "That's enough!" But the damage had already been done. Elijah looked out at the audience, then quietly folded his paper and stepped down. He didn't storm off. He didn't yell back. He just walked away. The ceremony ended early. The crowd was stunned. Children who idolized Elijah clutched their signs. Parents murmured angrily. And someone, no one knows who, uploaded the entire scene to the internet. The clip went viral overnight. Fake HOA mocks firefighter who saved lives. Karen's silence is a hero. He lost his voice saving people. She used hers to humiliate him. Comments flooded in. She needs to be held accountable. Where's the respect for first responders? This man gave everything, and that's how he's treated? Within 48 hours, the local news covered it. Then national outlets picked it up. Karen's face was everywhere. The smug interruption, the cruel tone, the laughter, it all played out over and over. The backlash was swift. Her fake HOA newsletter was canceled. Businesses pulled her printing sponsorship. She was asked to step down from every local volunteer group. People stopped answering her door knocks. Even the mayor weighed in. "In this town, we honor those who serve, not mock them." But Elijah, he stayed silent. 2 weeks later, another gathering was organized, this time by the Veterans and First Responders Alliance. Hundreds showed up, many from outside Ashbrook Heights. The theme was simple: hear the quiet ones. Elijah stood on stage again. This time he didn't speak. He simply held up his old fire helmet, charred, cracked, but worn with pride. Then one by one, people walked up and read pieces of his original speech for him. Children, seniors, a Marine vet with a prosthetic leg, a nurse who once saw him carry out a child from a burning trailer. Each voice gave life to the words Elijah had tried to say. It was one of the most emotional moments the town had ever witnessed. Karen didn't show up, but she watched, from her living room, for hours. Then again, something shifted. That night, for the first time in years, she wrote a letter by hand. Mr. Ford, I was cruel. I was wrong. I spoke from ignorance, not understanding. My voice caused harm where yours had once saved lives. I cannot erase that, but I want to learn how to honor it. If you ever allow it, I would like to apologize in person. Karen Whitmore. She didn't know if he'd reply, but 3 days later, a folded paper appeared in her mailbox. Forgiveness isn't silent, but it starts there. You're welcome to walk with me next time we visit the Burn Survivor Center. Elijah. Weeks passed, then months, and slowly Karen changed. She stopped enforcing fake rules. She started listening. She joined Elijah at a few fire safety fundraisers. She even volunteered to help at the burn center, where she heard survivors speak without sound, but with immeasurable power. One day she stood beside Elijah at a youth event. A boy with burn scars and a speech impediment clutched a mic nervously. Karen kneeled and whispered, "You're not less because it's hard. You're more because you still try." She looked up at Elijah. "I wouldn't have said that a year ago." Elijah smiled, not with words, but with something louder. Grace. Message of the story. True strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through pain, carries others without praise, and teaches those who once mocked it how to listen again. And sometimes the greatest redemption starts when silence is finally honored, not feared. Side story: the quietest room in the building. The Burn Survivor Center on Maple Street wasn't a place of sadness. It was a place of strength. In one of the therapy rooms, painted with soft colors and filled with sunlight filtering through linen curtains, sat Elijah Ford and Karen Whitmore. It had been almost 6 months since that day in the park. Karen now volunteered twice a week, quietly without fanfare. She helped organize donations, clean therapy rooms, and sometimes just sat beside survivors as they practiced forming words again. Her own voice, once used to dominate, had grown softer, less certain, but more human. On this particular day, the center was hosting a youth storytelling session where burn survivors of all ages could share their stories, however they could. A boy named Mateo, no older than 10, stood at the front. His hands trembled as he held a note card. His voice was thin and unsure, his scars visible across his cheeks and neck. When he stumbled over a word, Karen instinctively stepped forward, but Elijah gently touched her wrist and shook his head. "Let him." So she stepped back, and Mateo, with every ounce of courage, finished his sentence. "I thought no one would want to look at me again, but people here, they listen." The room was silent. Then came the claps. Gentle, real. Karen felt her throat tighten. After the session, she sat beside Elijah on a bench just outside the therapy room. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the floor. "I used to think strength was about being louder than the room," she whispered. Elijah nodded slowly, then handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it. It was her own words from that letter she had written him months ago, typed out and laminated. "What is this?" Elijah tapped his chest, then pointed to the center's entrance where a new sign hung. "Welcome to the Hall of Quiet Heroes." Karen blinked. Why? Why my words?" He pulled out a pen and scribbled on a sticky note. "Because you turned them into action." Later that evening, as she walked home from the center, Karen passed by Elijah's house. There was a new sign hanging beneath the flag. "Some voices save lives. Others learn how." She paused, smiled, and placed her hand over her heart. This time she didn't need to say anything, because for the first time in her life, she finally understood. Silence isn't absence, it's reverence. The end.